Trish Artelman, and I'd like to speak again like Joyce did. In the question of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution, not by a balanced budget. Don't think of your budget that you have that comes from the salary you earn, that this will be equivalent to what they're talking about. Mark Levine said this: all federal departments and agencies shall expire if said departments and agencies are not individually reauthored in standalone reauthorization bills every 3 years by a majority vote of the House of the Representatives and the Senate. When you stop to think about it, there's very little that are in those enumerated powers. One of them was to take care of the military. Our military has not been taken care of. The Department of Education is there, and it has been growing and growing and doing things that we don't want. So essentially, what Mark Levine is saying is that every 3 years they'll vote on them. They're not going to get rid of them. They may even add to them, all the departments. They only had 4 secretaries underneath of the beginning of our country. Think of all that we have now, all those departments and that. They're not supposed to be there. We better start taking care of the chains of the Constitution.
Any other open mic? That was a good lineup tonight. Thank you very much. So now we'll get to our speaker, and you know, I just happened to be over doing some photo seminars in the Chelan area, and you know, that's right in the heart of Washington apple country, and I got to see a lot of good apples, right? And so it's kind of ironic tonight that we get the opportunity to have Representative Caldier talk to us about another kind of apple and how much they get along. Welcome, Michelle Caldier.
Thank you. So originally I came tonight because Elizabeth Scott, she's a dear friend of mine, and you know, I wanted to be here to kind of root her on because I really think she should have got the appointment. For those of you guys who don't know, she was ranked #1 by the PCOs, and unfortunately, the liberals, Snohomish County and King County, decided to not have her be in office. So they appointed somebody who was a lot more liberal, and she said, well, forget that, I'm still going to run again. And I said, you go, girl. So I came here tonight to root her on, and then Johnny said, hey, why don't you come up there and take mine? I said, okay, so here I am. So for those of you guys who don't know me, I represent the 26th Legislative District, which is part of West Bremerton, Port Orchard, Gig Harbor, Key Peninsula. Jesse Young and Jan Angel are my seatmates. I serve on 3 committees. One is Appropriations, that's the Money Committee. Also Education and Healthcare, Health and Wellness. So my background is I'm a dentist by trade, and kind of got into this whole thing because of some regulations that they were trying to put on dentists and everything. And so at any rate, here I am, and so healthcare is a huge part of my background. This last year I had a couple health issues myself, and I had some vision issues. Anyhow, Sherry Appleton, I didn't know her very well at all. She comes over to me on the house floor and she said, hey, I heard that you might need a ride. So why don't, you know, I come from the north end. If you'd like, then why don't I give you a ride? And I thought, you know what, that's pretty nice, because my whole thing is that I don't care who you are. If you're willing to work with me to fix some of the problems that we have in our state, by all means, let's go do that, you know? And if she was very kind enough to say, you know, hey, I'll give you a ride, well then absolutely. I have a whole family full of Democrats. They're not all that bad, you know. I still love them, you know. And so at any rate, so she started giving me a ride, and I had been talking with some of the doctors, because after my vision stuff, I started talking to a lot of the doctors that were there, and they said, you know, we have a serious problem in our county. Harrison Hospital, once CHI Franciscan took over Harrison Hospital 3 years ago, they started using their leverage to not only not allow the doctors, the independent doctors, to have operating room time, but then also use their leverage to make it so that you couldn't get a referral. So some practices, for example, an orthopedic surgeon, you know, you wouldn't get an outside referral normally. Usually people fall down and they break a leg, or they get in a car accident and they break a leg, and that's when they go to the orthopedic surgeon. I don't know anybody who's in the middle of gets in a car accident and goes, you know, that orthopedic surgeon, I think I better go see him first, you know? And so basically they were starving out these independent practices. And so one by one, CHI Franciscan just started buying them out. So they use their leverage, starve them out, start out all the competition, buy them up, and then what they did is between, let me see here, over the course of 3 years, they wound up making it so there were 5 specialties where there was nobody in Kitsap County or in the region that was not affiliated with CHI Franciscan. And so, oh yeah, it was a true monopoly, okay? So then, after they did that and got their monopoly, then guess what they did? Overnight, well, that too, overnight, they said, you know what? You can't get your care done at ambulatory surgical center. You have to get that done in a hospital setting. So for example, if you come in needing an EKG, instead of it costing $500 for that EKG at an ambulatory surgical center, you have to get it done at a hospital setting because they get what's called a facility fee, and it would cost $4,250. Total ripoff. Okay, and that was almost overnight. So all these doctors are just sitting there telling me this. Well, it just so happened because most of them live on the north end of the county, they were also in Sherry Appleton's ear. So I started off doing contacting the Department of Health, contacting the Attorney General's office, contacting Jay Inslee's office. I mean, I was doing everything I could, and I said, you know, hey, this is wrong. What can we do? And believe it or not, she has better relationships with those people, you know, because they're all Democrats. And so, you know, she said, well, hey, I've been already working on this. And I'm like, I've been calling them. They haven't been calling me back that much, you know? And so she said, no. I've already got a meeting scheduled. So why don't you work with me? Because I have a little bit more background with the healthcare policy piece. And she had kind of more of the connections. And I said, well, let's work together and let's figure out what we can do. So we did the op-ed in the Kitsap Sun. We started collecting just stories from people saying, hey, I went in, I had this huge bill, I had, you know, a breast biopsy done, and now they're overcharging me, and they said, you know, my insurance company says I should have had it done at this particular center, but I just did what Harrison Hospital told me to do, you know, I didn't know any better, you know, and so they're like, I've got all these high bills, I don't know what to do with that, because the out-of-pocket cost, like for the EKG, the out-of-pocket cost, instead of it being $125 on average, the out-of-pocket cost was $1,250 on average. So that's the difference. I mean, that's huge. And so at any rate, the Attorney General's office said, well, you know, antitrust antitrust violations and lawsuits in our state. We've never had one for hospitals. This is something that is happening across our state where they're acquiring all these independent practices, and basically they're just a huge giant. And they said, but you know, we'll take a look, okay? So they wound up doing records, you know, getting their internal emails where they were gloating, the top execs were gloating that they were overcharging Kitsap County residents, and that this was all planned out. And so as a result, about 2 months ago, the Attorney General's office, which by the way, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff he does, but you know, he wound up filing a lawsuit against CHI Franciscan. And that was the first lawsuit ever in our state. And so that was something that I worked with Sherry on, and you know, I really believe had she not had those relationships, I probably wouldn't have gotten as far as we did. And so I really believe that regardless of whoever the person is, I don't care what your background is, I don't care, you know, what your political affiliation is, if you're willing to make sure that you're doing the right thing for the people, and I may not agree with you on most of the stuff that we're working on, but if you're willing to work with me on this particular issue, I will absolutely work with you. And I'm sorry, but rising healthcare costs, that's one of the top issues that we have in our state. So just so you guys know, they just came back, and I believe that in the exchange, it will go up this year on average 24% premiums. It is absolutely ludicrous, because what happens is that when they overcharge us, right, the insurance companies, because of the Affordable Care Act, they come back and they say, oh, see, look, we just spent more money, so therefore, you know, our actuaries came back and we're just gonna rise, you know, increase the cost. So one of the other things that I found out throughout this whole thing is then on top of that, CHI Franciscan is trying to move all of their beds from Bremerton branch over to Silverdale. Okay, so even though I'm a dentist and I have a lot of healthcare background, I wasn't very familiar with the certificate of need laws that we have in our state. So basically, you have a region, so our region includes all of Kitsap County and some of Pierce, and I believe some of Clawlin and Jefferson County. And there's so many beds that you can get. And of those beds that entities can go and get the certificate of need from the Department of Health. And right now, Harrison Hospital and CHI Franciscan, they have every single bed in our region. They're not using them all, but basically what they've done is they've secured it so that they have a full monopoly. So no other entity, we could not get any other hospital, we could not create a community hospital district. No other entity is allowed to compete with them. They have full access. And I didn't, you know, like I said before, when I first got here, I mean, this is a huge learning curve that I started understanding. So basically, after they have all those beds, now what they're going to do is take every single one of them and move it over to the Silverdale branch. And they show all these beautiful pictures of this new Silverdale branch, and everything's going to be fantastic. Of course, what you guys forget is that Bremerton branch, they just got done doing a remodel in 2012. And I'm trying to track the dollars as to who funded it, because I believe it was us taxpayers with capital funding dollars. They had a tour, because they had us go through a tour, okay? And then they said, oh, look, this is an Ebola decontamination area. And I said, what do you mean an Ebola decontamination area? When did you guys do that? Oh, we did that in 2015. And I said, well, if you guys were planning on leaving the entire Bremerton branch vacant, why on earth would you spend the money in 2015 to remodel this entire area for an official Ebola decontamination unit? Okay, decontamination unit. Guess what they told me? They got the money from Homeland Security for that. And I'm like, that's us. That's us. So basically, you took our tax dollars and you used that for an Ebola decontamination unit, fully knowing that you guys had all the plans to leave that building vacant. It's going to be vacant. It's going to be an eyesore in Bremerton. And so one of the things we're fighting, and I believe that we're actually going to win, is to leave some of the beds in Bremerton so it can have kind of a subacute hospital setting, because really that's where most of the need in the county is. So, you know, and then on top of that, the other problem that we have is if they were to move every single bed over, all of the surrounding areas, all the rehabilitation facilities and everything else, those were all built, you know, because of the hospital. So all of that's going to go away as well. And I just said, you know, I just find it hard to believe that, you know, those pictures look so beautiful, but not only did you misuse our tax dollars, But my whole thing is I find it very hard to believe that it's not a coincidence, it's just a coincidence, that you're moving it over from the poorer area of the county, okay, and making it so it's in the wealthier area of the county. Okay, you guys are a nonprofit organization. You don't pay taxes. You are supposed to be here for a community benefit. And so I'm just saying it would be one thing if they were a regular company who, you know, who wasn't getting tax breaks and wasn't there. The whole purpose there is to make sure that they're benefiting the community, you know? And so I'm sorry, but as a nonprofit, you get certain benefits, and one of the benefits is that you're supposed to be there for the people. I think that you guys are a big bully and you lost your mission. And that's why I didn't like it very much, but I'm kind of a little bit more of a vocal person. But so that's been one of the other things that I've been working on, is trying to prevent that from happening and at least making it so we have some of the beds there. I'm working on a couple other pieces of legislation. I call it the no Bogart one. So basically, if you're not using the beds, you can't hold on to them so that nobody else can compete. You know, we need to have a free market in the area and not this whole monopoly thing that you guys have been doing. So those are some of the things I've been working on. It's taken a while. You know, it's taken actually a whole year for all of this to come into place. But we really need to figure out what we're doing with our healthcare system. There's a lot of stuff that I'm hoping will change on a federal level. But until then, I mean, you know, I'm trying to do what I can on a state level so that things are a little bit more fair for us. So yeah. Yes.
There were several states that rejected using the certificate of need because of this very factor that these people are using that as a means to an end to create a monopoly, and that the state of Washington, unless you, the legislators, reject that certificate of need, we will be dealing with this sort of thing. So we need to reject it, and then we can do a free market kind of basis for our health care, our hospitals.
So okay, so I get exactly where you're going at. The only thing I will say is that in the House, we're in the minority. And right now, the current chair, who is Eileen Cody of Health and Wellness, who's a Democrat, this is something where I brought up that same point, and I said, why do we even have the certificate of need process? Because I feel like it's basically making it so that you are allowing these hospitals to have a monopoly. And you have to realize that kind of whatever she says goes in the House, because she's the chair, right? She's got the gavel. But for her, she said what we used to have before was we didn't have the certificate of need process, and as a result, they would have community hospitals coming in where everybody was getting taxed, and it was actually, you know, something that was working out. We have that over in Port Angeles right now. But basically, then the bigger giants would come in, starve out the smaller community clinics, and she said it was worse. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm in the process of looking into that. But at the same time, I'm trying to change it, because right now what we have is not working. I don't know if that's necessarily true with what happened before, but at the same time, you know, she's the chair, so I have to work with her, you know.
I was at the meeting when the state...
For questions, raise your hand, and we want everybody in the room to be able to hear the question.
My question is that when I was at the state certificate of need reevaluation at the school district office, which was too small of a facility for people to attend,
Yes.
they deliberately did that, picked that one so that people couldn't come in and sit down and hear all of the information. The state is in cahoots with this policy. The certificate of need was instituted by a Democratic president and his administration. And so the Democrats are pushing this because they're encouraging this monopolization. They are part of the problem.
Right. Well, and the only thing I will say is that during that certificate of need hearing, the people who were up there that work for the Department of Health, because you have to realize that, you know, there's different ways you can get things done, right? I can go up there and I can scream and yell, and the reality of it is that for the Department of Health people who were there, I have been working with them. They have been working with us for this whole reconsideration hearing, and you know, we were very lucky to get that. And so that's kind of one of those things where, you know, I have to say that working with them, even though I did not agree with their original decision, I still have, and those are still people I have to work with.
The department even admitted that they didn't use their normal bed count per person or per population in the county and everything. They just picked a number that was existing, but they didn't take into consideration that there may be even more people, and they didn't do a bed per 1,000 patients in the whole area, so they weren't even following their criteria.
I have a funny feeling that happens a lot of times with the agencies. And trust me, because I have been so frustrated with many of the agencies. And unfortunately, you know, the governor appoints the people who are in charge of these agencies, and when it comes down to whether or not you can hire or fire them, yeah. and that's all I can say is that trust me, I have gone round and round with some of these government agencies because I really believe that some of them are not working for us at all. And so but it's at the same time, it's one of those things where if you have someone who is actually listening within the agency and you're like, okay, here we go. Like, here's more information, here's more information. And so that's the whole thing, is that if you have somebody that it's trying to pick and choose, you know, who it is that you can work with, and for those ones who were there, they have been working with us, is my only thing I can say. And I'm hoping that the result will be that they have to keep the bed there. I'm almost positive it will. So they also allowed me to give them information to go back and say, had they not been gouging the Kitsap County residents, what would their 2016 numbers be? You see what I'm saying? So it's like, if I have a funny feeling that if I had been, you know, really aggressive and mean and called them all sorts of names and everything, that they maybe wouldn't have allowed me to do that. And it's just one of those things where you're right. Some of the stuff they're not following it happens all the time, and it's quite frustrating.
We have another question here.
Okay.
So I have a couple questions. So if Ferguson's filing this lawsuit, when will we find out how that goes, and is that going to make a difference? And how would that make a difference? Are they going to go back and look at what's been done and say, if I get a bill that should have been $125 and it's $1,200, what do I, as a patient, and is the insurance commission, don't they have some say over this? Or shouldn't they be kind of watchdogs over this happening?
So
there's
a couple different pieces. So the Attorney General is asking for them to basically unwind everything the damage that's been done. But unfortunately, as we know, I mean, once that they've already starved out all the independent doctors, they're already, the likelihood that they can unwind it, I don't know how that's going to look. Okay, but he is asking for that. I don't know whether or not that's going to happen. The cool part with all of this is that it's put some of the other hospitals in check, and it's actually made them slow down a lot. The other lawsuit he did as well was the charity care one. It was he did it against CHI Franciscan, but it was for the Tacoma Hospital, St. Joe's. And basically, because they're also supposed to be doing so much charity care, right? So if you're not paying taxes to the tune of $100 million a year, and then you're only doing charity care to the tune of $5, right? You're basically a nonprofit and you're saving $95,000 in taxes, right? So that was one of the other pieces, was that they weren't doing adequate charity care. And so that's the other lawsuit as well. The biggest piece is that all of these other hospitals have they're on notice. So that's one thing. And as you've seen before, I mean, it takes time to really change things. And so I would love to see that, them giving refunds to people and
It
say,
didn't take very long to change for them to do what they've done. You know, look how quick that's, like you said, it's been almost overnight. So
well, it's been, yeah, it's been,
I know people that
Yep.
work for the Harrison, and I remember the same thing, and it's, so we're gonna be paying for all of that.
right.
We're gonna be paying for all that as patients, so do we have a choice? It's like, okay, I'm not gonna go to Kitsap, then I'm gonna go to Tacoma. If I have a choice, I'm gonna get a doctor in Tacoma. Do we have that option?
Well, I think it depends on your insurance. Unfortunately, because with healthcare, it's not just access to providers, right? It's also what, you know, unfortunately for many of us, we don't have the ability to say, oh, well, I don't care what my insurance company says, I'm just gonna have the flexibility to go wherever I want, right? Most people, if they have to go to the hospital or if they have a major surgery done, they don't have $20,000 in their pocket to, you know, spend wherever they want. So usually you try to go to an in-network provider because your out-of-pocket costs would be less. And so as a result, there's certain monopoly kind of systems within the insurance company as well. In fact, this last year, one of the other major issues is because the way that we do, they do bidding of insurance company on the exchange is that it's done by county. Well, some counties are not very healthy. Some counties have got an aging, you know, people who are older and it costs more money. And some counties don't. They have got younger, healthier people, right? So as a result, there were two counties, I believe, Klickitat and I know I'm going to think of the other ones. Klickitat and then there was another one where basically they had no insurance companies that they could get through the exchange. None at the beginning of this year. We were able to renegotiate and get one. We have 5 other counties. It was Grace Harbor, Klickitat, Grace Harbor. We have 5 other counties where they only have one insurance company. So you want to talk about the effects of Obamacare and the effects of making it so that we don't have any options. Because, you know, kid you not, insurance companies are there to make money. They're not there to make us healthy. They're there to make money. It's not confusing to me, okay? And so one of the other things that we're going to be putting forward for next year is trying to maybe divide the state into different regions that are a little bit more equitable, so that we're not having this whole system where you have, you know, like Snohomish County where you've got 13 different options and people are fighting because they're like, oh, well, they're young and they're healthy and we're not paying out as much, versus Grace Harbor, where Grace Harbor's is actually the most unhealthy county in our state. And so yeah, so those are some of the things that we're working on. It's very difficult, you know, I mean, I'll tell you, it's very difficult. Just part of the reason is just because I'm in the minority. And so it's kind of 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But it takes a lot of work, it takes time, and I really am excited because I feel like I'm finally at a point where things are starting to make a difference. And the other piece, of course, is the relationship piece, where just because you might have somebody who's on the complete opposite end of the political spectrum, they might actually be your friend on a certain issue, you know.
Other questions? Any other questions? Any from the other side of the room? Doesn't just have to be on this topic, I imagine, right?
Actually, can I respond to Mary Ruth's comment earlier with the voters pamphlet?
And then we're going to have another question here.
Yes. Okay. So I wanted to talk about that. First of all, you're right. The advisory vote is a complete waste of money. And it's sad that we still have the advisory vote. You are correct. A lot of legislators don't look at the advisory vote. I always do. So far, knock on wood, every vote I've ever made that went on to the ballot for an advisory vote, every single one of those, the district as a whole voted in favor of them or against it. So it voted with me on each and every single one of those. So you are correct that there is more money that's going to be put in for property taxes. However, one of the main reasons why we put it forward is this, and you have to realize, of all the proposals that came out, This was the best of all of them, if that makes any sense, okay? So the other ones were state income tax, all these other things, okay? So the only thing that is positive about this is that it makes it so there's an equalization. So the problem before that we had was that folks in Bremerton, folks in South Kitsap, where the property values were very low in comparison to Mercer Island and Bellevue, they were proportionally paying considerably more in taxes. So this next year, because of the levy cliff, it's going to be kind of a fun year. I think everybody's goes up. But then in 2019, there's a cap as to what they can do for the levy. So it goes down to 4.2. So it will go from 6.59, I believe, in Bremerton, and I think 6.79 in South Kitsap, and it will go down to 4.2. Now, on the flip side of things, Mercer Island and Bellevue and King County, they will be paying a lot more in property taxes. So that's where it's coming from. That's where most of the money is going to be coming from, is from them, because in order to get $1,000 from them, they were taxed at a much lower rate. So part of the thing was to make it so that we had a cap on it, because we had basically this runaway levy system where there were winners and losers. There were significant winners and losers. We had major issues with how we were funding our teachers. And quite honestly, some of it wasn't fair. You know, we had a system to where the newer teachers were, in my opinion, getting very screwed over, I guess is probably a good word. You know, they were starting off getting paid about $33,000 a year. That was, the starting pay for a teacher. So you're thinking, oh, well, that's not too bad, right? Okay, except for, well, it is terrible, right? But I'm just saying that for some people who might think that that's not too bad, okay, then on top of that, here's the messed up part, is that you had to get your health insurance through the WEA, and most of the people who negotiated it, they were some of the older teachers, and they negotiated it so that all the younger teachers were getting paid proportionally more. So I have a couple who they teach over at South Kitsap, and they showed me their pay stubs. Because I said, I don't believe that you're taking home $1,000 a month. Like I couldn't figure out what the math was, because we're supplementing their healthcare insurance to the tune of, I think it's like $720 a month. In addition, they were paying over $1,000 a month for the premium. I'm like, are you serious? They're 28 years old, and they're each collectively paying like $1,800 a month for healthcare? Oh, but it was negotiated. So that was the other piece of what this bill did. And that was one of the things that I was a real strong advocate for, was to make it so that it's more even. So basically, that bill allowed it so that they can get insurance through SED. It's basically PED for teachers. We're going to have a statewide system, get the union out of it so that they're not taking money off the top, and making it so the average teacher should be going down around $600 a teacher per month. And so that was the other piece of the bill, because trust me, I struggled with my vote on that bill, because there were some things that were positive, and then the other thing that it did too was it capped out the top amount. So you had some school districts, like for example Marysville, where I believe that the average teacher is getting paid around $120,000 a year, and then you had such a huge discrepancy with these starting teachers where they were getting paid $33,000 a year. So now the minimum got changed to $45,000 a year for the starting teacher pay. So everybody said, okay, that's ridiculous. That's going to go up, and then their take-home pay is going to go up as well, because their insurance premiums won't be so high. And that was one of the reasons as to why we were having issues with keeping teachers, because they're sitting there going, okay, I'm making $1,000 a month. I mean, that's what they bring home. And I didn't believe them at first until they showed me their pay stubs, and I started taking their pay stubs and showing other members, and I'm going, no, they have a legitimate reason to complain. That's ridiculous. So why on earth would we expect them to stay in that industry? You know, and that's one of the problems that we have, is that the workforce is aging, and we don't have the younger teachers there. And so we needed to do something. I could care less, well, I really don't care that much about the Supreme Court and what they think. I think that they're very political, and some of the decisions that they made were inaccurate, severely inaccurate. I don't know if it's really necessarily their place to do certain things, and their full $100,000 a day fine. We never paid that. It was nothing. It would be like your husband fining you $1 a day for your mortgage. You know what I'm saying? Where you're just going, okay, well, my mortgage is more than $30, so I don't know what the point of that was. It was kind of silly. It was all political grandstaging, which I get a little annoyed with. But hey, it's part of the whole thing, right? So, yes.
Yeah. Johnny, I've got a question about the education, the bill that...
Can we take this question first?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I have one quick question. I read in the paper, and this was some months ago, that there were 10 less beds that were going to be at Silverdale than are at Bremerton. I couldn't believe it. Is that true?
You know what? It probably is. I was not aware of that it probably is. And the thing is what are they going to do with those 11 beds? They'll sit on them and make sure that nobody else can use them.
Real quickly, there are some places that are still independent, because I go to the doctor up north. And at any rate, my daughter was charged for the things that she had to have in the lab. And it turned out that was one of their clinics that they owned. And then she went up to north, and she asked, do you do the same labs? Yes, they do. And it was about 1/3.
So there are I believe five specialties. So there's orthopedic surgeons, I believe endocrinologists, oncologists, pulmonary surgeons, or pulmonologists, and then there's one other. Those are the specialties where they're all CHI Franciscan. There's other ones, for example, like ophthalmology, that they're not. They decided for whatever reason to not go after them. So you're right. There are still some independent doctors, but in certain specialties that there is no choice.
Question in the back.
I want to go back to the education piece. Thanks for explaining some of the elements of that. But wasn't one of the motivations of Republicans to change the formula to reduce the local tax burden? So they determined that a lot of our school funding is unconstitutional in the sense that local folks are having to fund a large portion of the cost of their school districts, whereas the state should be funding. I mean, you should be funding through the state legislature. So I think the bill is going to relieve the burden, I believe, as far as local school levies. Is that not correct?
Correct. So the other piece, you're correct. So there's multiple pieces to the bill, okay? And mind you that there will be problems that we find along the way that we never thought, because, you know, it was such a large piece of legislation. But one of the other pieces was that, you know, for some of the school districts, like I said before, they were winners and losers. So they had this horrific funding formula where some of the school districts were getting around $6,000 to $7,000 per student per year. Some were getting $50,000 per student per year. And so there were already major inequities with that. And so some of the school districts that were getting less money, they said, well, wait a second here. Like, according to your funding formula, we cannot keep and retain, you know, start teachers at $33,000 a year. Like, it's, and so what they were doing illegally, you're correct with that, was taxing the local citizens with their levies and saying, hey, you know, and they had, you know, and basically funding the teachers partially with that. Some of them were doing that, some of them weren't, okay? So the other piece of this is basically saying, hey, you can only use your local levies for certain things that are not considered basic education. So for example, if the school district said, we want a lacrosse team, they could go to the citizens and they could say, we want a lacrosse team. Do you guys want to pay money for a lacrosse team? Then voters can say, yes, I want to pay for a lacrosse team, or no. And if they use the money for something other than a lacrosse team, then there would be other, well, originally what we had in there was more teeth, but basically that we could have internal audits performed and they could only basically utilize the money on that lacrosse team. They could not take it and spend it on, you know, a football team or teacher. Definitely major reforms that were in there. You know, but one of the things that we did do was equalize the teacher pay and say what is normal and what is, so it starts off at 45,000 and it caps off at 90. So you couldn't, so that was the other piece too, was that they couldn't go and have some of the school districts paying their teachers $120,000 a year, than having all the surrounding area, you know, basically fighting, you know, they would fight over the teachers in some school districts. So for example, if Bremerton School District was able to pay their teachers $100,000 a year, but South Kitsap could only pay them $50,000, right? Well, then all the kind of the good teachers are going to drift to Bremerton naturally, you know, and then South Kitsap is going to wind up with the lower pick of the litter, you know. And so those were some of the inequities that were fixed. And so our property taxes should be going down, and the levies should also be going down. The levy amount should be going down, and especially for Bremerton and for South Kitsap. I'm not sure about North Kitsap because I've really focused on my district. But Mercer Island is not going to fare very well. So.
All right, we have another question in the back here.
Yeah.
All of the concerns in the bill seem to be focused on the teachers' pay and equity and so forth, and full-time equivalent pay and so forth. But the purpose, I feel, of education is to teach children knowledge. So isn't there any consideration for what the children are taught and what they are learning? And the costs could be considerably less if you got rid of all this data collection and testing and some of these federal mandates that you have to follow. So it would be, or is there any consideration for what the kids are learning?
So for the federal mandates, that's something on a state level that we don't have much flexibility on this for the federal stuff. However, with the testing piece for the statewide testing, that was a completely separate bill. So that was Representative Drew McEwen put that one forward, and basically it delinked the testing requirements. One of the other things that we're trying to push is basically to say, you know, what's the point of education? Is the point to make everybody pass a test, or is the point to make it so that they can be career ready, right? So one of the other proposals, one of the other things that we're really working on is making it so that if someone's got a job in the Navy and the Navy says, hey, this is a stellar person, you know, why is it that that's a bad thing? Why is it that isn't considered basic education if we were able to get them to where they could have a good career? Or also making it so that they can have other technical jobs, things like that. But you're right, there is a huge piece as to what are we teaching the kids, and is this something, you know, what we're teaching them actually making them a better person, or, you know, college and career ready, basically. And I absolutely question a lot of the material that we have. That was not addressed in this bill. That has been addressed in many other bills, however.
Back here.
Hi there, really interesting discussion. Two things that are not apparent. Why do we have to increase taxes when there are so many opportunities to reduce spending in the government that now exists? If the answer is, oh gee, we had to do something, the answer is no, that's not what government's all about. The second question is, who has done the performance audit of our school system to determine just exactly what it really costs to teach a student the basics that we want them to know, so when they graduate, they can be useful and productive citizens?
So historically, we have not had a good system of checks and balances, and that's one of the reasons as to why we're in the situation that we're in. And as you know, that up until 3 years ago, we had one party controlling the House, the Senate, and the governorship. And quite honestly, I've been very proud with our Senate in terms of making it so that we have some sort of reform or some system of accountability. But you have to remember that they're not in full control of the place. You know, I'm in the minority in the House. If I was in the majority and we had Jan in the Senate in the majority, and I mean, we could get a lot done, you know, but unfortunately, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we are in the process of creating reform. Absolutely, and that was one of the other things that we had with this bill, was that they would get audited and make it so that the levy dollars, there was transparency as to what the levy dollars will pay for, and making it so that that's exactly what they pay for, instead of going to the voters and saying, hey, we're going to fire a bunch of the teachers if you don't vote for this. Like, that doesn't feel good, you know? No, I don't know anybody who sits there and goes, oh, I know, we're just going to make it so all those people get laid off or whatever. And it's like, I'm sorry, but we had a bad system before. And the reality of it is that now, even though we added more tax, more dollars to it, it should, just as Roy Runyon said, it should be decreasing the amount that we are spending on the levies. So it's kind of, you know, an increase in one area, but really they should be decreasing overall. And there should be better transparency with those levies. So if you decide, I don't want a lacrosse system and I don't want to pay for that, then you can vote no, and you're not worried about, you know, having your grandchild's teacher getting fired. So.
Time for one more question. Anybody have a last question? It figured it'd be
More of a request. The next time you carpool with Sherry Appleton, ask her how many gun control bills she has ready if the Republicans lose control of the Senate.
So that's one of the other things that you're right, that will be coming forward this year, that I'm incredibly worried about, because unfortunately sometimes when very tragic things happen in our country, a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction is, oh my gosh, we got to take away the guns. You know, how dare they? And the reality of it is we don't have all the information as to what made this gentleman do that, and whether or not he was alone, or you know, how it all happened, and whether or not there was a law that could have stopped that. Because last time I checked, murder was illegal. You know, so if you're going to go ahead and take the steps to, you know, shoot 300 or 400 people, I don't understand why they wouldn't also take the steps to getting a gun illegally as well. And I think that most of the responsible gun owners that I know, they absolutely want to make sure that the guns are away from the criminals and mentally ill. And I really believe that if they allowed gun owners to be at the table to try to help solve some of these problems, that they could be solved, instead of having people who've never owned a gun their entire life be the ones making all the, you know, putting forward the policies. You know, to me, I always feel like you have to go to, you know, people who are very experienced in that area, and until you can do that, we're never going to solve the problem. You know, and I look at the same thing with like the opioid crisis. I'm trying to get people who are, you know, current addicts and former addicts. I think that they should help solve what the opioid crisis. They know it better than I do. I've never been addicted to heroin. I don't know what that's like, and I don't know exactly what would stop someone from doing that. I don't, you know, and that's to me kind of where I am in terms of forming policy. I'd rather have the people who have experienced it and are very knowledgeable helping develop that policy. And like, for example, with the heroin issues, I was talking to one of the addicts down at St. Vincent de Paul, or not St. Vincent, at Salvation Army, and he said, you know what we really need? And I said, what? You know, I'm thinking, I don't know, injection sites or something. He goes, no, none of that. He goes, what we really need is we really need a reduction in the red tape when we're ready for treatment. I was like, what do you mean? Because I didn't realize that there was that much red tape if you want to get treatment. He said, right now, if I said, I want to go into a clinic, they won't take me. It'll be about 3 months before I, because you have to go in, it's about 2 weeks before you get, the assessment, and then you have to wait about 2.5 more weeks on a waiting list in order to get seen. He said, if you really want to help solve the heroin epidemic, do that. And I was like, you know what? I like that. I would have never came up with that. And let me tell you something, none of the politicians that I work with, no one has ever came up with that as a solution. Why? Because we don't know. And that's another issue with a lot of the gun policy pieces that are coming forward. It's not written by responsible gun owners. It's written by people where, they have a philosophy and they have, a lot of them have never owned a gun. And I don't know why they choose that's going to be the policy that they're going to write, and that's going to be the issue that they work on. But I really think that if we have responsible gun owners come together and say, hey, what is it we can do? I think we've come up with some great ideas. So.
So we always give out a little gift, a token. And we already know we've given a card away or something else in the past. I think, look at that, isn't that great? But I know what she does, and you can have this too, by the way, back here. But this absolutely phenomenally valuable collector's item pin that says KPTP on it, and we fully expect our gracious representative that's come here tonight to stand in to send us a photograph of her signing some kind of a bill with the KPTP pin. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, you heard her, and so thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, that was great. I'm sorry that Elizabeth Scott couldn't be here tonight. On the other hand, I'm going to say this openly and honestly, I'm kind of glad she didn't come because we're about half the people here that we should have, right? Speaks to the point of the gentleman earlier. And I know that at least 2 emails went out broadly to the Republican Party. I notice we have the Libertarian Party leadership here represented. Is there anybody from the Republican county leadership here tonight? Because I honestly don't recognize it. So you are all you're the choir, right? We are the choir. We need some interns. We need some additional folks. So call your Republican PCO, or even your Democratic PCO. I'm happy with that, right? We don't care who comes in here. We have free speech, and we listen, and we're okay. We want to fill this room, and we'll reschedule Elizabeth Scott, hopefully for January, February timeframe. I don't think we can get her on the schedule for next month, which will be next month. Remember, a board election. So this is your chance to get rid of me. Okay, just so we don't want that bald-headed, big-eared guy on the board anymore. Or, in fact, the existing board, would you please stand up? The existing board that's here tonight. In the back, Tom and Chris, Sandy Dahlquist, give those two a round. We got Chuck over here. Joyce, who has spoken tonight, Joyce, our education expert. Who did I miss? Faye is right here. I saw Dawn earlier. Where did Dawn go? Did he leave early? Joanne, and of course our great video master back here. You always have to say hi to him before you leave. Okay? He's so quiet you'll never know he's there. So please thank them for their service. We'll be voting again next year. You're volunteering to be on the board again?
No.
She voted for him. What?
We have a student here. Would it behoove us to ask her, what would it take to get some interest from the younger people?
Did you hear the question?
Do they care about, I didn't care about it when I was her age. politics or something. You know, I mean, that, what would it take?
She's a senior now, so.
Well-
And you're a senior in a room full of seniors, just so you know.
So I think really the big thing for me is taking this AP Gov class that I've been taking. I was never really into politics. I never really thought about going to a meeting like this. I didn't even know these existed until a couple months ago. So I think just like being open to talk to people about it. I know everybody my age, there's kind of the stereotype that we're all, very liberal. We don't really want to talk about the other side. But everybody that I've talked to is, really open to learning about all different sides of it, and especially going to something like this, where you really get to hear a different perspective that you don't hear every day. So I think just not being afraid to talk to people about it, because everybody that I've talked to has been, really interested in learning, and even just going to this meeting has made me want to branch out and go to more meetings and try and, go to see what there is to see. So, yeah, I guess just not being afraid to reach out and talk to people, because we're really interested. So,
We're old gray hair, old gray hair.
Give her a hand. So if there's no other questions tonight, we do have a question?
Yeah, my question is regarding the seminar on parliamentary procedure. Could we repeat the time and place?
We took notes on that. Is he still here?
Right here. Tuesday, election day, the 7th, and the following two
Tuesdays.
So the 7th, the 14th, and the 21st of November. Time and place. 7 o'clock, and that's at the Republican Party headquarters in Sylvia.
On the second.
Right next to the Kitsap.
It's by Kitsap Credit. The old credit union. You know where the Mongolian barbecue is and the credit
9481 Sylvia Lane Northwest. 241.
It's above the credit union.
Okay.
Grocery outlet there.
Yeah.
Between grocery outlet and the credit union.
So the last and most important bit of business tonight is, I did mention earlier that we are able to do these meetings and our activities based entirely on your donations. So you'll look to the left or right and you'll see a donation envelope. We truly request that you pry into that squeaky wallet of yours. No, not really, I didn't mean to say that. And please be generous. And the more you give, the more we can give back. Thank you very much. Drive safely tonight. Good evening.